Hello, beings of light. Today we will share the near-death experience of Benjamin. He describes how he died and spent 70,000 years in hell. Now, let's hear his account. What I'm about to tell you, I've only shared with about 50 other people, and I swear to God it's true. I never knew where to start, so I'll begin at the beginning and go from there. It's going to be long, but again, it's the truth. I spent some time in a psychiatric ward after telling a close friend what happened to me. I was born in Georgia in 1972, the son of a religious man and a less religious woman. My parents gave me up for adoption when I was 3 years old. As a 3-year-old, you don't understand how your parents could abandon you. I cursed them, the heavens, Satan, and anyone else I could think of. At 4 years old, I was taken in by people who seemed nice. How wrong I was. Dan and Robin were nice at first, and it seemed like I would finally have a chance at happiness, something every child wishes for. But it was a facade. They only wanted the money. I was 6 years old when they hit me for the first time. It was for the dumbest reason. I had a nightmare and screamed, waking up Dan. He said he'd give me a reason to scream. The more I cried, the more he hit me. I remember hurting so much from the beating that I wet the bed, which made him hit me more. I couldn't sit for a week after that beating. I cried and begged for God to take me away. Clearly, I wasn't wanted by these people or my biological parents. I continued to be passed around in the adoption system. The chances of a child being adopted after the age of 6 are slim. The beatings continued until my first year of high school. After a particularly brutal beating, I decided I'd had enough. I joined the weight training program after school. By my second year, I was 230 pounds of solid muscle. Coincidentally, my sophomore year was the last time they tried to hit me. It was also the first time I got in trouble with the police. Dan didn't like the way I said yes to Robin and punched me in the face. 2 minutes later, Dan was on the ground, bloodied, with a broken jaw, a fractured eye socket, and a partially torn ear. When the police arrived, Robin and her other children lied, saying I attacked Dan first. The police didn't want to hear my side. I spent the next 6 months in juvenile detention. When I was released, my social worker, Mrs. Jones, picked me up. Mrs. Jones was a sweet 54-year-old woman with 3 children and 5 grandchildren. I was informed that Dan and Robin no longer wanted me, so I went back into the system. I continued to question God about why I was here and what I had done so wrong. On the day I turned 18, I aged out of the system. At 18, you're on your own. I was 7 months away from graduating high school, but now I was officially homeless. My anger towards the system only worsened. I dropped out of high school and became a petty thief, stealing only what I needed to eat. Contrary to what some might say, sleeping outside isn't fun. There's nothing fun about laying your head on the ground and covering yourself with newspaper to keep warm. I was judged, spat on, called a lazy bum, everything you can imagine. Humans can be very cruel. There were times when I went hungry for days. Eventually, like other homeless people, I got addicted to bad things. First, it was alcohol, then heavier substances. I thought if God didn't care, why should I? I started stealing copper from construction sites and houses. My habits were extremely expensive. I had just taken 66 pounds of copper to the scrapyard, which earned me enough money for a day's worth of product. I won't go into too many details, but it was mixed with something more potent. I started having seizures, spitting, and vomiting. My immediate thought was, it's finally over. After years of abuse and feeling unloved, I would finally have peace. I stopped believing in God when I was 12, and since I didn't believe in God, I didn't believe in the devil. I was ready for the approaching darkness. My body stopped convulsing, and a sudden peace came over me. I saw myself traveling at 1,000,000 miles per second through a dark tunnel. I stopped abruptly, and then there was nothing. Walking through this darkness gave me such freedom. I didn't feel the constant pain or sadness. I didn't feel the joy of making everything disappear like when I started using. The emptiness was extremely peaceful for me. Occasionally, I felt like I was being watched. Eventually, I felt the need to speak. God, why me? What did I do to deserve this? As I continued to ask, I felt like I was being watched. Why do I care? You abandoned your own son. Why wouldn't you abandon me? I continued speaking into the darkness, letting it all out. Screw it. Why do I care? I muttered. Then I heard the faintest sound, repeating, "Let me in." I shouted, "I couldn't stop you anyway, so come in." Something came toward me, at a speed I couldn't judge. First a dot, then a hole, and then the darkness began to disappear, replaced by the brightest light, like headlights blinding you on a road. The light was so bright I had to squint. What followed was indescribable. The love I felt was intense, like my skin was melting, but not in a burning sense. I sighed as this love hit me. My eyes adjusted to the light, and I saw the outlines of two extremely tall beings. They were at least 8 feet tall. As they approached, they adjusted their height to mine. They wore robes and sashes like those from Jesus' time. The being on the left had brown hair and eyes, not ugly, but not handsome, perhaps average. The being on the right was stunning. Human words couldn't describe him. "Who are you, and where am I?" I asked nervously. "Do not fear, human. You know us by many names," replied the being on the right. "I don't know any of you," I said. The being on the right murmured their names. Samuel, Satan, Lucifer. I felt pride and ego in his voice. The being on the left spoke. "My child, you call me by many names. Yeshua, Jesus, the Prince of Peace, the Messiah." I knew where this was going and interrupted them. "How can this be? Every religious text says you are mortal enemies." Jesus spoke. "My child, though we follow different paths, my brother and I serve our Father's will." "Brother? Father? What is going on here?" I asked. "My Father created all of us, you, me, and him," said Satan with disdain. "I was his beloved son, then he created humans. He gave you free will and a short life." I became jealous. I tried to break that bond by giving you knowledge. My father's anger knew no bounds. I was accused of rebelling and cast out. I rebelled further, inciting Cain to kill Abel. I never tried to take my father's kingdom, I just wanted his attention. This being hated humans. But if we were all God's creation, didn't that make us brothers? "Enough, Samuel," said Jesus. "Yes, we are all our Father's creation." "Why am I here? Shouldn't I be in hell?" I asked. Jesus laughed. "Benjamin, you served your sins in hell for 70,000 years. I'm here to bring you back." I was stunned. "I've been here for only 10 minutes. Jesus laughed again. "Time doesn't work here as it does on earth. You have a choice to make." I was still trying to get over the fact that I had been in hell for 70,000 years. Hell is a lake of fire. There's no escape, I thought. Satan smiled. "There is a lake of fire, but it's reserved for the worst of your kind." I recoiled at his delight. Jesus said, He served his punishment. He remembered our Father. Let him go. Satan made one last threat or promise. The way you're going, Benjamin, we'll see each other again soon. He's all yours, brother. Satan grew another 5 feet and disappeared. Jesus spoke. It's okay, my child. You can speak. I thought hard, but only one question came to mind. Why was I abandoned by everyone in my life? Why did my parents abandon me? Jesus replied, Your parents loved you as my Father loves you. They died in a car accident after they got married. They begged my father to let them come back, but their bodies were too damaged. My father decided not to intervene. A tear formed. Why did he leave me with Dan and Robin? Dan and Robin were respected members of the community. They were corrupted by Samuel. Why let me go through the beatings? I scoffed. Because you could endure it. You provided an outlet. Without you, Dan and Robin would have killed your adopted sister. She will never go through that because of you. I was angry. I was made the sacrificial lamb. I'm dead on the street with a needle in my arm. I begged for proof of your existence, and all you say is, because I could endure it. Jesus listened patiently as I let everything out. He hugged me. After a while, he said, It's time. You've punished yourself enough. It's time to go back. Why go back to earth? There's nothing there for me, I said. Jesus felt my hesitation. Come, walk with me. As we walked, the light transformed into lush green and blue landscapes. Why do I have to go back? You have much to do in this life. Things will get better. He showed me things I could look forward to. I agreed to return. I woke up in an ambulance, heading to the morgue. The paramedic shouted that I was alive. Hang on, kid. We're almost there. Where was I? What happened? Was I dead? I asked. She replied, You were found with enough substance to kill an elephant. Yes, you were dead. Tears streamed down my face. I spent 70,000 years in hell for taking my own life. At the hospital, the doctors ran tests to determine how I came back to life. They didn't realize that their tests couldn't explain the power of God. When I was well enough to leave, I was arrested for the copper thefts. A sympathetic judge heard my story and granted me clemency. I had nowhere to stay, so I would be back on the streets. Mrs. Jones decided to take me in. She didn't have to help me. She had already done her job. She was the first I told about my experience in hell. She committed me, thinking I was using again. After I explained what happened and how my real parents died, she began to believe me. She showed me true love, helped me get back into high school, and apply for college scholarships. She was there when I graduated with a bachelor's degree in information technology, when I got married, and when my wife and I became parents. Mrs. Jones became mom and grandma. This is the eulogy I gave at her funeral 6 years ago. My heart still aches when I think of her. Mom was an angel, and God is the ultimate architect of our lives. It took a while for me to understand why I went through everything. Mom had too much on her plate and couldn't take in another child. She probably knew about the beatings, but had no proof. Dan and Robin's license was revoked, and they ended up in prison. Dan was molesting his daughter, and Robin was molesting the boys. I like to think I protected those kids a little. I know this may be considered blasphemy, Jesus and Satan being brothers. Not everyone will understand that we all come from God. Jesus, Satan, and humans are all brothers, whether we like it or not. Satan is horrible. He enjoyed torture and taking out his pain on others. He despises our existence, but can't stop us from crying out to God. That's why I was allowed to leave that horrible place, because I remembered our Father. People ask why God doesn't destroy Satan. Could you destroy your own son? Benjamin's account is at least intriguing. Regardless of personal beliefs, his story challenges us to reflect on forgiveness and purpose. May we find peace and love in our own journeys, just as Benjamin found in his. I'll leave it here and see you in the next video.